much, everybody, for joining. Tell them why you mad, sis. Speak what you really feel. Today, we have a special treat. I have another chapter soror. I get so excited when I get a chance to highlight my sorors doing amazing things. I have Soror Satira here. She's in the Washington, D.C. alumni chapter with myself. Oh, ooh.
Yeah.
And she is an author. Look, we got Deltas doing some major things around here. We authoring books, so we got another chapter sort of authoring and giving everyone an inspiration to get out there and get it. So, Satira, can you tell everyone about yourself?
Absolutely. So I am newly published, like within the last month. I'm a clinical psychologist in Anacostia, DC. I've served my community for the last 20 years in Anacostia. And um, what do? I do couples therapy. I do individual therapy. I do a lot of work with women, but most importantly, I am completely dedicated to working with people who look like us. I am a African-centered, African-American clinical psychologist who spends all of my time and energy making sure that we are whole and well, our families, our relationships, and our children. So that's who I am.
Oh my gosh. So tell us about this book.
All right.
What we
So
got? What we got?
about 3 years ago, I started looking for a book for the kids that I work with. You know, one thing that we talk a lot about in therapy is journaling. I feel like journaling is extremely powerful. What I tell my clients is that all day long, there's just stuff that's going around in our head. It's stuff that comes from our past, things that we've been through, things that we've seen, things that we're going through now, the things that we want for our futures. And ultimately, you know, when all of that just goes around and around, sometimes we get overwhelmed. And a way to basically make that tangible and kind of put that out there is to journal, is to write about it. And I went on a quest because I feel like the earlier you start as a journaler, the better off you are. So I looked for African American guided journal. And I looked high and low. I looked in Black bookstores. I looked on Amazon. I was in Barnes and Noble. I was in all these spaces looking for this because I thought that was simple. It should be easy for me to grab some kids' journals that are guided to talk about us and our history and help to inspire them and to affirm them. But I could not find not one. I could not find a kids' guided journal for African American children. So there's an old African proverb that says, "I'll find a way or make one." And that's exactly what I did. I made a way. I created this journal. It was never my quest to be an author. It was never my quest to have to figure out how do you publish something and how do you get this number and that number and all of that. But it was necessary. So it really was my opportunity to fill in a gap. And that's what Black Genius is.
I love it. I love it. Something that I absolutely speak to in this on my podcast and other platforms is as far as mental health and making sure that you're balanced and that we're well. And the fact that you chose the children, chose the children. So, what about do you believe in the African American family, the need for children to be able to write and journal and get out their thoughts? Why center it to the kids?
Right. So everything that I see, I started my career at a special education school. So I was working with the kids. The school was probably like 30 minutes away from DC. The kids would hop on a bus and go all the way out there. It was for special education. And the school was packed with services. They had art therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy, group therapy. And of course, I was an individual counselor. And I would look at my colleagues every week and they would wonder, like, why are we not able to help these kids? Why aren't we able to get through to them? Why are they not making any shifts? And to me, it was common sense. When you don't include the family, when you don't include the collective, especially working with Black kids, there's not much you can do. So you're doing this great therapy, but you're sending them back into a home where you haven't empowered their parents. You haven't given their parents the tools that they need to be able to parent and do the things they need to do. So even in writing the book, I wrote it with that in mind. How can this be a family guided experience? And that's really what the feedback I've gotten. So even though this book can be used with children that are as young as 4, or kids that are transitioning into college, one thing that's been really helpful is if they sit down and kind of find out, like, this is the book, and so for each day, they look. It's not something you have to start at the beginning of the year. For each day you look and see what went on in Black history on that day. It just so happens that on today, Dr. Gloria Randall Scott. It was significant because she was born in Houston, and she was the first African American president of the Girl Scouts of America. And that's a
Wow.
big deal to think about this huge organization. But this Black woman became the president, and she went on to do great things even from that. She even went on to become the president of Bennett College. So being able to talk about that on every page, I ask a question. It's a curiosity question to get the kids to start thinking about like who this woman was and what does this mean and what was the impact. So for me, a lover, an absolute lover of HBCUs, I know very well about Bennett and the Bennett Bells. But for a kid growing up in DC, what's Bennett College? Oh, glad you asked. And this is the opportunity for them to talk to their parents and do the research and look on Google and figure out what is Bennett and why is it special. So it causes even more conversation. But the other important part is for each day, there's a writing prompt. So, I put one of her quotes in, and then from that quote, there's some type of prompt for the kid to start writing about, that prompt and how it applies to them. How does this woman and what she said apply to my life today? And that's what's significant. So it becomes a family activity that they're able to interact together on this, regardless of how old the child is.
Oh, that's amazing. Amazing, Satira. The fact that you just, again, you start with the children, but then incorporate the family into the piece because, again, our families, Black families, we have some difficulties because we are dealing with generational curses, that things that we don't know about, and having to face that now and given the opportunity to really just dive into that, get the juices flowing and get it out there. So I have to ask,
Mhm.
now that you've written and you're published and you have your guide to wellness, Black family wellness, I'm gonna call it. I done coined it my own little term, the guide to Black family wellness
Mhm.
through journaling. What are some things that you think will be the next steps for you?
Mhm. It would be like I again remember I didn't set up out to be an author, so it's not. I don't see enough. Some people are like, "Oh, I'm thinking about my next book." I'm not. I'm thinking about this book and how can this book be used? How can I use this book in family therapy? How can I do workshops with this book? How can I help educators use this book? With their classrooms and things of that nature. But my first love and my focus continues to be therapy and the healing process for Black people. So, however, this book fits into what I've committed my entire life to is really where it will sit.
So in diving, because I asked Karen this question last time that when she was
Mhm.
sat down, as far as how did you start? Like what made you just your day one? What was I'm doing this? What did that
Mhm.
look like?
Well, and the funny thing is, I started because I thought this was going to be easy. Anybody who has been to
Right?
uh,
I'm just kidding.
anybody who has been to a Black church or a Black funeral sees the little calendar. There's a calendar that they set out, in the back of the church at the end of the year for the new year, a wall calendar that has all kinds of Black history facts in it. So every day it has a little Black history fact at the bottom. And I was like, I'll grab one of those books, one of those calendars, and I'll, Google some stuff, and I'll easily be able to come up with what Black people did significant each day of the year. And then I'll be able to find a quote from the person who did something significant that day. And then I hadn't even thought about the curiosity questions, and I hadn't thought that much about the writing prompts at that point. But
Yikes.
after I started, and it's interesting that the way our history is documented, there are some days that you can look, and there are like 20 well documented things about what African Americans or Black people have done, in the country and the world. So it's like I'm sitting there looking to see which one of these would be most relevant for a child and which one of these are things that they may not know. But there's some days where it's like, Maurice Smo invented a piece of a shoe tie and got a patent on it, in 1862. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, yes, that's significant, but is that something that I really need to put in the book? And then how do I find a quote about him doing that like that? So that, it became hard. And then the other thing is when you look at those calendars, which makes sense because a lot of times they come from funeral homes, it's like so and so died today. So and so was assassinated. So and so, got blown up.
Right, right.
So when I'm thinking about a children's book, that's not what I wanted to necessarily. I wanted to speak life and wanted to talk about legacy and not just, all right, this is the day that we lost so and so. So it took a lot more research to figure out what was a quote and what was a fact of the day since I could only use one. So that's why I started. I started just looking through the history, and because I'm curious, there would be days that I would go down a rabbit hole, and
Mm-hmm.
I may be looking up a fact for January 13th, and then find out that something else happened, and then I'm like doing all kinds of extra research, and then before you know it, the day is gone and I know everything about Delta Sigma Theta's founding and more stuff, and I'm like, well, I wonder what they did then, because I've been a Delta for 26 years, and it may have been a while since I went through all of our illustrious history. But then, the next thing I know, I look up and 3 hours have gone by and I haven't gotten anything except for like one line. So to say that this took 3 years in the making is not an understatement. Like it literally took 3 years, but I got started and then I stopped and then I got started again. Um, but I do like what somebody said about this time in our lives where she plagued it as a not a pandemic, she calls it a windemic, and talked about how can we find ways to win during this time, even
Yes,
though
I
the
like that.
and things about us, like how do we win? And I was like, you know what, I'm picking this journal back up during this time, and making this a windemic for me, just like other people have done. So that's what pushed me forward to be able to do this and get it published and get it finished.
So you pushed right on through, girl. You were like, listen, let me go ahead because I'm going to ahead and let you know, guys also know something about just anything, whether it be business, writing a book. It's a journey. It's a complete journey. So, as Satira just spoke to, she talked about, how she never gave up. She was persistent. Like, there were periods of time, I'm sure, sis, they were just like, Lord, I don't feel like it today. But like, and you didn't, but you did not ever forget about your vision. So, like, I just want you guys to know that she just again gave y'all a whole testimony about how not to forget about your vision. Like, she said 3 years. 3 years. Like, if somebody, people like, okay, prime example, we go to college, girl. We go to college.
Mhm.
When we get there, freshman year, we're like, I'm a freshman. Yes, college is fun. Oh my God. By the time you hit to be a sophomore, junior, you be like, all right, let's see, let's calculate these hours. Let's figure out what we gonna do to graduate. And I see that same concept with coming with writing a book. Like, would
Right.
you, I mean, would you even, could see that particular analogy where you're just like, okay, it's my freshman year. So I'm starting.
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
excited. I get it. I party a little bit because I have my periods of rest, like I kick it, what I'm saying? I'm out on the yard, whatever. And then next you get serious because you're like, I'm not trying to be here all day. I need to make some money. These student loans packing up because like them refund checks ain't looking too enticing no more. So you just like, look, we got to hurry up and get it out. So like, that's writing a
Yeah.
book.
No, I would definitely say that is, it's like people say it seemed like a good idea at the time, but when you're in it and you're like, okay, is this really going to be useful? Did somebody else come out with another book that would be even more relevant during this 3 years it took me to get this off the ground? So there's some self doubts, but then I always kind of circled back to my purpose. So again, I can't tell other people to journal if I'm not journaling myself. So through my journaling and through looking back and seeing what I've written and all of that, I remember the purpose. I remember what it felt like to get, my organization as a nonprofit. So I received a grant, 3 years ago, and that's what I decided to do with the grant. I wanted to make sure I put these books in everybody's hands, the books that I was buying from somebody else. I didn't know who that was, but not being able to do that and feeling disappointed and knowing that I had to, do something real generic that year. I think, I'm looking at this journal right here. I think I just kind of gave them like something like this, which is just straight like blank pages, right? And that's not
Mm-hmm.
what my that wasn't what the vision was. And looking back and seeing how disappointing, like, kids love the journal, right? They love, even getting the blank one, and they were really appreciative for it. But knowing that's not what I wanted to give them, knowing that they deserved more, knowing that they needed to hear their history more. And then just over the last year, the last 4 years, to be honest, to see kind of all of the social unrest, to see us having to fight to let people know that our lives matter, knowing that our kids are like having a front row view of all of this, knowing that I had to give them something to be able to affirm who they were, to affirm why they were here, to affirm their ancestors and why their ancestors were here, letting them know that they didn't just pick cotton and say yes ma'am, knowing that they needed to know how rich their history is so that they can move forward and continue to make history and continue to make legacies. So when I knew what my original mission was and what the vision was for this project, that's the one thing that helped me push through. So that would definitely be the advice that I would give to anybody that was trying to push through but kind of feeling stuck, whether that's feeling stuck in a position at work, if that's feeling stuck in school, if that's feeling stuck in a relationship, wherever it is, really figure out and tap into who you are and what you need, and why you're here. What is your legacy? What are you trying to do? And then stop wasting time. And wasting time is different. It's not that, I'm not saying that we don't need to stop and take breaks and renew and rejuvenate from time to time, but I am saying that we need to be very cognizant of our time and how we're spending it.
Intentional.
And that's an important piece.
I like to
Absolutely.
call it intentional. You definitely have to be intentional about the life that you want to live and how you want to live it, and it includes your goals, and making sure that
Absolutely.
you're constantly reaching your goals. So like
Mhm.
something that you just mentioned though that kind of sparked me in my head. I'm like, we definitely need to touch on this as far as our ancestors and going back to how rich our
Mhm.
history is, as that you spoke about. That we don't even, I think sometimes our generation misses how rich our history really
Mhm.
is and how we are really our ancestors' wildest dreams. So because
Yeah.
we're like really our ancestors' wildest dreams, it's kind of like you once you really take in the responsibility of think about history and what African Americans have been through,
Mhm.
slavery, then we've been through, Reconstruction, all of that, then civil rights movement, and even modern day today's civil rights. We're going through all of this. We should not waste their attempts to make us better. So this is an
Right.
opportunity of making those dreams and goals and legacy, making that
Mhm.
come into fruition and actually leave your kids something, like
Right.
besides problems. Let's not do this to our kids no more, y'all. Let's not leave our kids problems, because listen, I'm telling you, I got a whole stack of personal stories. That's the reason why we got student loans now, because our parents couldn't pay for us to go to college, so we made it happen. Or
Right.
scholarships. Got a scholarship. So Soror,
Absolutely.
I love that we have chapped it up for quite some time now. I want you to give everyone in the audience, and tell them why you mad to speak what you really feel, your contact information, and also get their hands on this journal. Because like we need to know about our history. We need to get these Black families together. And I love the movement that you got going. So I need to let these people know how to find you and the goodies. How do they get the book? The journal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, of course, my first choice, my attempt is to, and I'm working hard to make sure that this book is in all of our Black bookstores, because if we're real, like that's where people need to be getting it from. Like, there's these, big marketplaces who get all the money and all of that. And I think they kick back like $2 for every journal. That's what the author is, $2 or $3. And, I didn't do it to make money, so that's not a big deal. But if this can be a way that Black bookstores and independent, Black boutiques and things like that, if they could have this up on the shelf and people could go there when they need to buy a gift for a child and all of that, that's what I would prefer. So I've been, um, sending free copies to bookstores all across the country, just for them to say, hey, we will carry this and we're going to get this from the printer and put it on our shelf. So, first and foremost, I would say, to ask for, Black Genius. Again, is the copy of the book, Black Genius,
Hold
Genius,
up a
a
little bit
guidance.
more so they can see it, because they need to see the full book. Yes. And I'm loving the Sankofa bird.
Absolutely.
Yes. You
And,
better let them know about the
that's
Sankofa.
So, and that's the significance why we put it on the cover, because we said that this is about like, and this is the way I live my life. Even for my nonprofit Ascensions, the whole our logo has the Sankofa bird in it, because it's all about being able to move forward, but not
Not
forgetting where
forgetting
you
where you
came
come
from,
from.
and then also pulling
Yes.
people up with you. And
Listen. Yes, I have two
mhm.
Sankofa birds tattooed on my ankle. And sis, guess what? Sankofa is my line's name. Like our name is called Sankofa 9. Like we was with it. It
Oh
was
wow,
Centennial. Centennial. We was
oh,
ready. We was ready to turn things
love
up in Delta.
I love it. I love it. So, and
Yeah.
that's, I pledged that at Wilberforce University, which is our beta chapter.
Yes.
And we,
Rich in
is
history.
those of you who don't, Wilberforce is absolutely, founded in 1856 by the AME Church. And as soon as I walked on the campus, we were told it was our responsibility. Like, yeah, it's nice that you made it here. You made it to this nice HBCU, but your responsibility doesn't stop with you. Your responsibility is always, as we say with Sankofa, go back and fetch it. So go back and
Yes,
fetch
a
your history,
Patrick.
go back and fetch, bring them, bring them along. So that's always been kind of what I've been about, making sure that, again, there's no fun if it's just
The
me.
homie
There's no
can't
purpose
it
if it's
ain't no fun if the homies can't have nothing.
so. That's been the purpose. So yes, I would ask that you go to your local Black bookstore here in DC. We have Mahogany Books, we have Sankofa Videos, and I have been in contact with both of them, to hopefully have it on their shelves very, very soon, or wherever you live, to look at that. Um, the book can be purchased from me directly. It's on my website. So if you type in Black Genius Journal, it should come up under Dr. Satira Streeter Corbett. And I would love to get, 3, 4, 5 of these in your hand.
Listen, everybody, listen. She said 345, meaning you can't just get one. It's like Doritos. You can't just have just one. I think that's Doritos line. Whatever. Listen, Tara, thank you so much, Soror, for joining me on Tell 'em Why You Mad, sis. This has been an amazing episode. I love the richness of understanding how, as African Americans, we should keep our legacy rich and also fetch back and get it, okay, and bring it to our people. And
Absolutely.
Satira is doing that with this journal by healing Black families. So you guys check her out. You guys can catch me on jennifercblack.com. You can follow me on all my social media. Check out my YouTube. And for other episodes, see you guys next week and have a wonderful day. Thank you.